There was darkness at the beginning of our history, but it was a quiet, suffocating darkness existing on its own. But suddenly one day a light came on that was very bright. But he was also loud and sparkling. And then he caused change and chaos. Light broke through the darkness and created time and motion. But it also created life itself. And the life born of the light grew stronger and stronger, and in the midst of the darkness there appeared beings of light. And they called themselves the Shining Ones. And then they began to rule the world. The darkness could no longer tolerate the arrogance of the Shining Ones. She created a guardian against the creatures of light, and his name was Phantaminum. He was a warrior of order, born of darkness, the strongest of beings. He hunted down the Shining Ones, turned them into jewels, and sealed them. But Phantaminum did not destroy them. He had already fallen in love with their beauty and was captivated by it. He made jewelry part of his body. He called himself the King of Jewels. But the King of Jewels and his treasures rose above everything. The world called him, and his followers swallowed up the light and bowed down before his power. Soon this baby was born and was screaming with his newborn voice. The girl who picked up the baby and said she had finally found him. And now he in her hands became a new Shining One. The girl told the child that his kind had been defeated by the Jewel King. And he's the only one who can stand up to the Phantaminum, and also their only hope. Urek Mazino. Suddenly a sudden jet flew out of the child and hit the girl's head directly. The girl became completely wet and said it was the primordial essence. The maid came up to Mrs. Gata and asked her to wipe herself. Gata wiped herself and replied that however now this child would make the whole world shine forever. On a dark night somewhere in the tower, Urek appeared and didn't realize where he was now. As he looked around at the complete desert, he realized he was a little lost. Urek continued his walk and, having reached a dead end, did not understand where to go now. And how did that bastard Phantaminum get away? Urek was greatly angered by this that he even began to clench his jaw. But suddenly, a guardian with a weapon in his hands who looked like an alien appeared in front of him. The guard said that he congratulated the one who managed to open the door and go inside. He has earned the right to climb the tower. And that means he's the chosen one and can go to the winner's tower. That's his chance to get anything he wants. The guardian approached the chosen one and asked him what he would say to such a proposal. Urek at that moment thought, what was wrong with this rabbit? But the guardian saw at once that this child was one of those who must not enter the tower. The guard turned his back to him and said he could go and get something to drink. Turns out he can't go any further. Urek started to laugh, but asked him for a clue on how to get out of here. The guard replied that he had no idea, and the boy would have to figure it out for himself. Urek got angry and stopped him. Urek said the guardian's words about being able to get anything, it could be a Phantaminum, right? The guard replied that he wasn't quite sure, but he couldn't say it was impossible either, for everything awaits him at the top of the tower. Urek thought for a moment and said he was in. He came here because he was following the Phantaminum, and the guardian himself said he didn't know how to get out of here. So he's going inside. The guard waved his stick and said that if that was his wish, he couldn't help. Just let him challenge the head because it didn't accept him, and he himself must rise to the top. Urek was glad that he had succeeded and immediately went through the portal that leads to the tower. At that moment, a siren sounded on the tower telling everyone to come up. And for the chosen ones, this is the trial floor. And they have to go to the lowest floor of the tower. And the ordeal is called hell. At this point, Urek was still dozing in the grass and didn't even hear the voice of the microphone. Urek could just smell the salt in his dream. The voice said that 400 people had gathered here. From now on, they would either kill or be killed. And the game will end when there are 200 players left. These people will go to the next floor. And if there are more than 200 in an hour, all the chosen ones lose. And so there's no avoiding skirmishes and hiding. And he gives them permission to kill anything they can get their hands on. One of the chosen ones was running through the woods at this point, holding the observance in his hands. But the other chosen one just saw the boy, and with his punches swung at him. But Guy dodged his blow and again running away, shouted to his opponent to spare him. But a wind rushed by him, from which he heard a voice, and told him to step aside. Immediately, a bolt of lightning passed near him, from which even the guy himself was surprised and did not expect. And at once the blood spilled from the enemy's chest. The girl asked the guy if he was okay. It turned out to be Lo Papabia Evelyn. The boy looked at her with delight and thanked her for saving him. Evelyn said she was not to be thanked. The guy felt bad and asked why. It's a kill or die game, so why did she save him? Evelyn replied that when the rules were announced, she realized something. They don't know what test will be ahead. If the 200 strongest are chosen here, it will be more difficult from here on. And since she has to fight later, she'd rather face the weaklings. So in this challenge, she's targeting the strongest. The guy asked the girl, did she help him because he looks weak? Evelyn replied that that was correct. Evelyn felt uncomfortable and asked, is he really strong? The guy raised his hands and replied that of course not. He is weak and feeble. Evelyn agreed with him and told him to follow her. The boy was happy to have such company and ran after her. But the other chosen one was fighting another chosen one who was not weak either. The chosen one was shouting that this guy was strong. The guy didn't understand why they were fighting so many opponents either, but Evelyn liked it and replied that it was her chance. Evelyn simply ran up from behind and jumped on top of her enemy's head, leaving a wound on his shoulder. She didn't leave him after that, and proceeded to thrust her long sword into the body of her chosen one, completely bathed in pools of blood. After killing the next chosen one, Evelyn simply cleaned her sword and said it was okay to move on. The guy at this point just wanted to get on her tail. Suddenly, Evelyn hid behind a rock and told him to do the same. Evelyn said there was a girl standing on the dais. The boy asked her, is she so strong that she has to hide? Evelyn replied, that's right. It's Princess Zaharda. The boy was surprised to hear that she was a princess. He had only heard of their existence. The guy wondered why they were in the same trial with such a monster. But she's a total hottie. The rumors weren't even lying. But Evelyn didn't like that and stuck her fingers right in the guy's eyes. The guy started yelling and asked if she wanted to gouge his eyes out. Evelyn replied that she was just a little embarrassed by what was going on around her. And maybe there's a fury simmering in her because she's strong, but not as beautiful as a princess. The guy told her that she was perfection itself. That's why he went after her. Evelyn replied that she had spared her eyes to hear that. Suddenly, Princess Zaharda extended her sword to the side. Evelina saw this and told the boy to duck immediately. Zaharda saw from afar and immediately pointed her sword straight at them with all her speed. The sword just swept through all the enemies at the speed of light, and only screams were heard. The guy at that moment wondered how she had managed to do that. One handled so many opponents alone. A voice from the microphone said that the number of participants had dropped dramatically, and there were only 252 participants left. Evelyn asked the guy, does she still think she's a hottie? The guy thought for a moment and said yes. But then again, he wouldn't want to get in her face. Evelyn got angry and stuck her fingers in his eyes again. The boy didn't have time to dodge and screamed again at the pain of his eyes. Evelyn said that now it makes sense why men die young. She thought losing his sight would help him survive. The boy answered her not to say such scary things. Suddenly Zaharda looked around and saw the boy lying in the grass and not moving. She thought, what's wrong with this guy? And is he just sleeping at this point? But a bunch of players approach him. And apparently they decided to team up. And now this guy is about to die. The enemy asked, why is this guy laying around? They said the tower would be full of all sorts of people. And he came out. They weren't lying. I never thought anyone could sleep in a situation like this. The enemy raised his foot and pushing him told him to wake up and sing them one song. And turning in the other direction, Urek answered that he still wanted to sleep. His enemy surrounded him completely after his words and decided to finish him off in his sleep. But sensing the attack, Urek performed acrobatic skills and with 2 feet went straight to the enemy's head. Zaharda saw it with her own eyes and said she expected that. Urek came to his senses and said that he was really going to sleep on. Did they understand? The enemy was simply frightened after his words and replied that he would not disturb his sleep. Urek pounced on him and asked him if he was aware that waking a person in deep sleep was harmful. The enemy didn't even have time to run away and fainted from such a shout and attack. Urek said that since no one would bother him now, he would go back to his side. But the voice immediately said that the trial would be over when there were 200 people left, which means there's only one person left to finish, and only 10 minutes to go. Zaharda, hearing such words, immediately descended from the mountain straight into Urek's territory. Urek asked her if she wanted to ask him out. Zaharda pointed her weapon at the guy and said he should kill him. And she thinks he's forgotten the rules. But that's okay, because she will help him. But Urek stops her and says he doesn't need help. Zaharda asked him if he didn't want to kill him. Those are the rules of this trial. Urek asked, why would he follow someone else's rules? He is a free man. But Zaharda told the guy that if he was going to treat the test like that, then she would kill him herself. Urek looked at the sword next to his head and answered her. He realized that if you looked closely at her, even at first glance she was a beauty. Urek became curious and blushing turned away. Zaharda didn't like this and asked him why he turned away. Was he afraid of her now? Urek replied that he didn't. He just doesn't know how to handle pretty girls. It's embarrassing. Zaharda asked him if he was even going to take the test. Urek stopped her and replied that it didn't have to be one of them. Zaharda said there's no time. The others are hiding and he won't find them. So let him finish this guy off in the next couple minutes. That's the best way out of this. Urek asked her, what about the comrade right in front of her? Zaharda didn't understand anything, but the guy told her to look at the microphone. Zaharda was surprised and asked the guy if he was serious. After all, that's where the test beacon is. And then Urek started yelling that it's a square guy, and he's included as a player too? The guy who was there was surprised and asked what kind of crazy person was that? Urek shouted to him to come down at once, for he would catch him for sure, and then this silly game would be over. Zaharda asked him, is he crazy? He's the administrator of the trial, an officer. He's not part of the general population. He can't catch him, and even if he could. But Urek pointed his finger down and shouted at him to get down. And if he caught it, would it count for 2 players at once? The moderator began to laugh and said that a madman had gotten to them. Suddenly, he saw a strange glow in the sky and Zaharda noticed it too. And after that, the moderator appeared right in front of Urek and turned out to be one of the strongest in this game. All the players were shocked to see the administrator of the challenge because he had joined the game. The administrator said he didn't know where the guy came from, but must be from a wild country where they don't know officers exist. And often it's poor, ignorant fools like him. So he wants to catch and kill to complete the ordeal, the officer asked. And as he sees it, the guy's become an administrator for daring to think that? Urek asked him what that meant. The officer began to laugh and turning to the boy showed what his plaintive laughter could do. The laughter was so strong and loud that the sound waves started throwing the players backwards. Zaharda even covered her ears and expected such a thing from the officer. He controls Shinszu with his laughter alone. The officer went under the guy's ear and asked him if he was in his right mind. There is a rule in the tower that officers are not to mess around with the chosen ones. But the trial administrators can impose appropriate sanctions on those elected who disregard the rules of the game. And taking away his leg would be a mild enough punishment, wouldn't it? Urek asked with surprise, appropriate sanctions? But what had he done wrong? And grabbed the officer's arm and lifted it from his shoulders and said such punishments. The officer was shocked that this guy had the power of the chosen one. But Urek asked, shouldn't those with special abilities be inflicting punishments? The officer replied that the brat had no idea about Shinszu. But suddenly the voice said that the number of participants in the trial had reached 200. And the game is over. Zaharda was immediately relieved, for someone had killed the last player. And from a competitive standpoint, it would be nice if this guy died here. But since he's so reckless as to defy the trial administrator, he might be useful to her in the future. The officer turned around and told the chosen one that he was lucky and could be thankful to be alive and resigned to the rules. And the tower is filled with monsters he can't even imagine. Don't get cocky. But the officer approached the princess and said he was rude. Zaharda replied that it was all right. But Urek said it was just a disgrace. After all, he could have put him down in a couple seconds. The officer immediately turned around and called the guy crazy. Suddenly, a portal opened in front of them through which the officer was to disappear. Urek was surprised, for he felt a sudden strange power. And a guy came out next to them and addressed the administrator Danjon. The guy told the administrator that would be enough and the rules should be followed. The officer turned around and was a little surprised that the principal had shown up at the test field. Urek asked, is someone stronger? The principal thought about the answer and said no. He is much, much stronger. The principal just turned around and said that the trial was over, and Danjon let him waste no time and be done with everything here. Danjon said in his loud voice that the ordeal was over, and all survivors would be moved to the next floor. But it's going to be even harder for them next, and they need to prepare for that in order to win, and turned around to look at Urek and told him that he especially needed to prepare. He was lucky this time, but if it happens again, he'll wipe him out. He doesn't care if he's chosen or not. Urek still stood his ground and responded to the officer to give it a try. Danjon again said that the first trial is over, and all the chosen ones will be moved to the next trial. At this time, inside the flying fortress of the test floor in the principal's office, the principal shouted that it was a disgrace. After all, the administrator had intervened in the initial trial. Danjon replied that he apologized for his reckless act. He was not supposed to give in to the provocations of the chosen one. It was the first time such a thing had happened. He could not contain himself. The director thought for a moment and said that he felt that Danjon was neglecting him because the floor ruler was absent right now. Danjon began to deny everything and replied that he couldn't have done such a thing. He's heard rumors about how the director is terrible in anger. He knows it's not just a rumor, so he would never dare. The principal said he was pleased to hear it. It shouldn't happen again. But it's unlikely, but if Danjon does fall for the chosen one's provocation again, let him make sure he wipes him out. And of course, he wouldn't have to deal with the consequences. Danjon realized his mistake and left the office. But Danjon thought at that moment, what does the principal want from him? He is only holding himself back because of his fear of him. But whatever the case, this chosen one's got a lot of nerve. And with the principal's permission, he'll smash him into the wall when he gets the chance. The director immediately opened the profile of the chosen Urek Mazino and saw that this time an interesting player had come to them. But he wondered where this player was from. But his place of origin is not specified. At this time, everyone in the player's room was rejoicing because they had moved on to another floor. The player rejoiced and said that more survived than he expected, and perhaps he should have tried harder. But Urek was walking next to him at that moment and hit the player with his shoulder. The guy got angry and asked him, "Is he wide?" Urek turned around and apologized, and said there were too many people here. But the guy, looking closer, replied that he was the one. And he dared not hold him back. Urek was a little shocked that the guy had changed his colloquial slang so quickly. But this player looks much older than him, but still addressed him as respectable. Suddenly, the administrator of the next test named Gisli appeared above them, and congratulated everyone on passing the first test. Urek was unhappy with the other administrator. After all, she is not like that guy, and he is annoyed by it. Gisli said that their new challenge would be very easy, and they needed to be able to do two things to climb the tower. It's about coming together and acting alone. Before they killed each other, now it's time to work together. They will be divided into groups of 3. Of course, the closeness will give them the opportunity to commit treason at any time. And it takes cooperation and independence to reach the top of the tower. So their new challenge is a traditional team game. And it's called Flip It or Leave It. Zaharda was shocked to hear about the flip games. But Urek didn't even understand the point of this challenge. But the bull that appeared told them to turn over or leave it. But somewhere in the tower on the mountain sat a player who was attacking the other players with his techniques. But at that moment, one player in front of him was just running away. He decided to finish him off and attacked with his beam. The principal approached him and said that the guy was not putting out much. The guy turned around and asked him how long had Rav been coming here? And what about the new chosen ones? Rav looked at the dead body of the boy and answered that it was nothing interesting. And looking around with his gaze said there was nothing interesting at all. Players started asking with wonder, what does flip or leave mean? And what is this even about? The player asked loudly, who are these people? Where did they even live that they don't know about this? Urek asked him, what does he know? The player replied to the older man that of course he understood what he was talking about. The player told Urek to extend his arm and leave it palm down or flip it over. This is how teams are formed. Palm down for one and up for the other. That way, they become a team. And if their palms match, they'll unite. So the older guy, have him tell him ahead of time whether he's going to leave the palm or flip it over. Urek asked the lad, why would he team up with him? Gisli suddenly said that unfortunately this game has completely different rules. Usually flip it or leave it helps to break into teams quickly and easily. And palm position is the determining factor. But there's a catch to their challenge. In a game of flip it or leave it, they will first play with the goat standing behind her back. The players were surprised to hear that they would be playing against a goat. Gisli said that was correct and asked them to look at his hands. His right hand is inverted, and his left hand remains in its accustomed position. Now let them look at her. Her right hand is upside down, and her left hand remains. That means she has passed this round. And now each of them has to follow the goat's hands to replicate their position. If they manage to repeat exactly to the end of the song, they have passed. If not, they lost. As they say, it's better to see once than to hear 100 times. And they are already starting the first round. The player was surprised and asked, right now? Gisli told everyone to get ready, and she gave the goat a signal to start, too. The music started playing and telling the guys to turn it over or leave it, because the chance to win or maybe lose. Let them decide and don't slow down. And if they are in doubt, let them leave immediately. Trump started twirling his arms and showing the moves, but the players resented it and said it was too fast. The confusion started and everyone was saying it was bad, and everyone was asking each other if they had noticed. Gisli asked them, "Is it too fast?" But that's a pity. Only 24 people successfully passed. Seeing the sign on Urek's body that he had passed, the player said with surprise that the senior had passed. But Urek asked him, "What's the big deal?" Gisli said that those who passed, they have the right to recruit their own team. When they saw that Princess Zaharda had passed, they began to approach her and asked to join her team. The player, seeing that Evelina had also passed, he asked, "The right to choose team members?" Gisli said it right. The right to choose your teammates among those who failed the GOAT game. It takes a game of flip or leave to make a player a teammate. And should they be shown again how to do it? Are there any of those who have passed willing to start? There will be more choices before they start. Evelina raised her hand and said she was ready. Gisli said, "That's great. Evelina can pick someone from the losers." The boy hoped that Evelina would choose him, but when he saw her walk by, he turned to her. Evelina approached another player and said that she had noticed him from the last challenge. He wasn't bad. Would he be willing to team up? The player asked her, did she think so? But the guy wasn't even surprised that she chose the others. And of course, she wouldn't mess with someone like him. Gisli said that now the two of them had to play each other. Trump turned on his music and said that if the palm positions matched, they would become a team. But if not, then Evelina immediately started performing the hands. But suddenly at the end their hands matched. The player was displeased and asked her why so fast. Evelina replied that it was frustration. She thought he'd be of some use, but she doesn't want to be on the same team with such a talentless guy. Gisli expected this from a member of the 10 great families. They understand the rules of the tower and play by them. Gisli said it was unfortunate that the two of them couldn't make the team, which meant Trump immediately grabbed his huge player hand and stuck out his tongue. And Gisli said that the loser would be sacrificed to the goat. The player yelled and said that wasn't in the rules. They didn't. But the goat could not be stopped, and opening his mouth he dropped the player and swallowed. The players were frightened and shouted that the goat had eaten him. But what is going on here anyway? Gisli told them that the way they saw it, if they lost, they would become an offering to the goat. But in return, if they win, they can decide if they want to team up with their opponent or sacrifice their opponent. And so teams of 3 will be recruited. All losers would be eliminated in the end. And now it was clear to Evelina. Even in forming teams, as in other trials, the strongest would survive. Which means, if he is able to replicate the goat's moves in the first round, he has the ability to eliminate those she wants off the playing field. And Gisli suddenly said that now the winners of the first round could choose their opponents among the losers. Zaharda approached the losing player and asked if they would play. The girl was shocked and had no hope that the princess would approach her. The blonde man looked around too, wondering who he should kill. And then a voice came from beside him, begging for mercy. Urek turned to the player who was standing next to him. The player turned around and asked the older man what was wrong. Urek offered him a game. The player asked with surprise with him, and froze in the moment. Urek asked him if he didn't want to. Didn't he say he dreamed of being on the same team with him? The player lowered his head, for he had spoken, but now there was one. But Urek asked, then what is it? Gisli immediately said that if those who refused to play would be immediately sacrificed to the goat. The player immediately shouted that he was playing. The player agreed and said that since these are the rules, he agrees. But in his head he realized that this was the end. There was no way he could keep up with him. Urek saw the player start to speak, but told him to put his face forward. The player thought facing forward meant he would flip. Or is Urek just messing with him? And can he be trusted? The player didn't even understand how to act at this moment, because he doesn't know or understand anything. Opening his eyes, he saw that their hands matched. He immediately rejoiced and shouted to the older man that they would be together. The player had told him that they didn't know him, so why did he choose to trust him? After all, his life now depends on him. He knows that, doesn't he? Urek replied that yes, he knows. The player asked, then why? He is not strong enough to make such a bet. Urek replied that he just thought the boy would believe him. And since he did, he trusted him. And isn't teamwork built on trust? If not him, then who? And then the player saw the hand coming towards the elder and stopped him and told him not to touch it. And they're a team. The goat immediately stopped. The player started bowing and said he apologized for being rude before. He was a nobody on the outside. He was lucky to be here. He would never forget that the elder trusted him. As long as they're a team, he'll never betray him. Urek agreed and replied to the player that he looked older and could speak normally. The player said he understood. The player told the senior to pick good teammates and build a strong team. Suddenly, Gisli said that the first round was over. Unfortunately, only 7 people had started to form teams, which means they will continue. But only 1 representative per team can participate in the game. Urek stood in front of the goat and started to repeat after him. The players said that Urek was in the middle and he added a false move. The player saw this and shouted to the elder. But Urek told him not to make a fuss. He lost on purpose. The player was surprised and asked, "On purpose?" Urek answered him to look around. And many did as he did. The player asked, "Did they do that on purpose? But why?" And they had already identified strong players in the last round, hadn't they? But who would want to risk starting the game with them? Urek asked, "Then why bother trying now to get a pick in this round?" They like him, want to avoid unnecessary conflict. The player said that he understood everything, which means no one will attack them this round. No one wants to mess with a strong opponent. Urek answered him that he was right. But still, the world is full of crazy people. Suddenly Zaharda was near them and turned to him. Urek turned around and said she was from a past trial, after all. And it's the symbol of a weapon. Zaharda went up to him and told him to play with her. Everyone started shouting that the princess would win. Urek also realized that she had her sights set on him. He asked her, is she trying to make a play? And if she was thinking of killing him, she'd better back off. Zaharda replied that he didn't. She wants to be part of the team. Of course, in order to do that, he has to win first. The players were clamoring for the princess to team up with this guy. He's from the 10 great families. The player also told the senior that this is their opportunity. And of course you have to accept it. Urek apologized and said he wasn't going to team up with her. He already has someone in mind. Zaharda didn't like that and asked, is there someone better than her? And he's saying there's someone better than her? Urek replied that it was simply a matter of taste. Zaharda accepted that and said that it didn't matter. After all, she's going to be on the same team with him anyway. And it's time for the game to begin. Urek replied that she was just a stubborn woman, and she would be a treat for the goat. But in his head he didn't realize, was this a game or flirting? If the latter, he would be serious. Zaharda told the guy that she's not going to take that role away from him, and she's not going to give in. If he doesn't want to die, let him focus hard. The boys started flipping their arms to the music, and at the end both yelled out that they had to stop now. And looking at his hands, the player began to shout that they had won. Urek could do it all. Zaharda said as expected. Urek replied at once that he would not unite with this woman. Trump immediately heard these words and turned to Princess Zaharda, saying that she would be destroyed in the second trial. Zaharda shouted at the goat to stop, but the goat did not listen to her and swallowed immediately. The players shouted that Princess Zaharda had dissolved into the goat's belly. He caught and ate her. The boys couldn't believe their eyes. Gisli was also surprised that the princess had dropped out in the second test. And even Trump ate it. The players asked, what does this mean? Princess Zaharda really did lose so quickly. But if he's going to be a princess, for example, what should she do to pass the selection test for the chosen ones? And that crazy asshole, what was he thinking? The player got angry and asked Urek what was in his head. And what would he do when he turned down Princess Zaharda for his team? Urek pointed his finger at the boy and replied that he would choose him. The player was surprised and asked him, was he what about that guy avoiding eye contact in hopes of not being noticed? He has no strength, and he looks like a weakling. So why him? Urek replied that there was something familiar about him. The player didn't understand and asked him what he was talking about. Urek replied, something similar to the odor he smelled when he got here. A faint smell of salt or something like that. And now he could smell something similar. The player asked the older man what he was talking about. Did he refuse to unite with the princess because of some feeling? Not because there was someone stronger and more useful in mind? Urek told the ally that this is exactly how it is. The player just didn't understand the elder and replied that he would go crazy. Urek suddenly remembered and told his ally that he keeps saying Zahar did this. Zahar did that. What is this even? The player was shocked and thought it was unfathomable. After all, This man doesn't know about the princesses of Zahard. Urek listened to Gambler's story and realized that the king of this tower was her father. And a long time ago, someone came to this tower from the outside and now rules it. Urek turned immediately to Goad and asked if he could reverse his decision. He thought he should meet the guy calling himself king. And he urgently needs to meet him and ask him how to get out of here with Fantaminum and the others. The players started yelling at the older man and saying that he was the one going crazy with him. It's too late for that. Urek replied that there was nothing he could do. He meant well, now targeting that guy in the next round. The ally went after him and told Urek that he trusted his gut. The goat immediately began to sing his song. The players talked and felt that it was getting more and more difficult. Gisli also said that only 6 people won this round. The guys who got up for the game all won and the rest of us got defeated again. Urek said it was time to look for more people to join her team. Evelina was also upset that she couldn't make the team. And the game gets harder the further it goes. When they were killing each other, all it took was skill. Now, it's not skills, it's trust. Even if she offers the enemy to team up, without absolute trust, she can't make a team in this game. In a place where everyone around him becomes his rivals, is there anyone he can trust? The guy was pretty upset that he had lost. Evelina looked at the guy and decided that she didn't trust him at all. But he's too weak. If they become a team, they have no future. Suddenly, Urek approached the boy and asked if they would play. Evelina saw the other guys approaching Rue, but she doesn't even know who they are. Looking closer, she realized who they were and thought they wanted to team up with this loser. Rue was sad before that, because no one approaches him. There is nothing special about him, so no one is interested in his death and neither is his team. And in that case, he's better off just getting lost and failing the test. Then he'll go back to where he came from. To his native slums, the backwoods village where all those abandoned by the gods fled. Urek approached him and addressed him as a child in a cap. Rue began at once to shout that he was weak and infirm and posed no threat. There was no point in destroying him. Urek replied that no, and that's not what he means. They want to be a team with him. Maybe they'll play a game. Rue was shocked that the guys were coming up to him, and turning his head he saw Evelyn's face. The players started yelling at her and asking what she was doing. They were the first ones to come up with an offer to play. No need to interfere. Evelyn replied that they were the first to strike up the conversation, and she was the first to offer to play. So that's her right. Evelyn told Rue for them to play with him. Rue got angry and told them all to stop fighting. Suddenly Gisli saw all this and said there was a dispute. Since both sides have good reasons to claim one player, let Rue himself decide. And whom, Mr. Rue, of those standing before him will he choose to play? Rue replied that he apologized to the one who came up first, but he wished to unite with Evelyn. Rue held out his hands and said he would turn both palms over and not make another move. He would not repeat after her and would trust her completely. Urek asked, did they already know each other? Evelyn replied to the guy that he hadn't hesitated at all to choose him before. And maybe Rue planned this whole thing carefully to get rid of her? Is he trying to trick her? If he is, she won't forgive him. Rue replied that of course not. Without her, they wouldn't be able to be a team at all. He really wants to team up with her. And it's because he's in love with her. And he likes her so much. Urek immediately turned around and told his new friend that they needed to get out of here. After all, it was hopeless. Evelyn was shocked and told Rue that she was part of the 10 great families and had many more peaks to conquer before she would consider marriage. And he's braver than he looks. Rue replied that he didn't. He didn't mean the wedding. Evelyn held out her hands too and said that she wouldn't make a move either. And she believes in him, too. And she seemed to like him in a way too. Rue was surprised and thanked her. Urek heard all their words and left saying that he had only wasted his time. Suddenly a guy came up to him and said that he thought it was not so easy to find a team. So why not team up with him? Urek was surprised and asked, with him? The guy replied that his name was Neo. He may not be as good as he is, but he is very strong. Urek thought about it and said there was some truth to that. But unlike that brat, he could get along with a lot of people here. And he doesn't trust him. Neo looked up and told Urek that he was a pretty good judge of character. And he's not someone you can rely on, but still, he won't stand in his way. And none of them are his targets. Urek saw that this guy made him dizzy, but he smelled the same. And these two have become a team. And a guy named Rue exudes the smell of salt. Urek agreed to play with Neo and said he would start. And if he succeeded, so be it. Neo lowered his head and thanked the boy for playing. Urek realized that this guy had aroused his curiosity. Suddenly, Gisli said that the allotted time was up, and the team assignments were over. And in this game, 10 teams were formed. Anyone without a team is eliminated. And the rest of us are off to the next challenge. And she congratulates them on their successful completion. Was Urek surprised that there were 10 teams? But there's only 9. Something's not right. Suddenly something happened inside the goat and a familiar saber appeared. Gisli said that the deadly battle in the waiting area had come to an end. And the 3 survivors automatically team up and move on. Risley understood the warning in this, but still her abilities are astounding. Princess Zaharda using ice. Gisli told her that it was a good thing they had prepared this game in advance. And the princess took him by surprise and there was nothing he could do. Zaharda asked the teacher, wasn't she the one who set the whole thing up by changing the rules at the last minute? Gisli replied that of course she was going to bend. She became a treat for the goat, but no one said she would be destroyed. And what's more, they will meet her in the next test. Among those who survive the general rules, they need to eliminate one person each to move on to the next test. And since her trio couldn't fully survive, they would call them remnants. Zaharda replied that it was a fair rule. And in the next challenge, she will avenge her humiliation. She'll do whatever it takes to destroy that man. After all, he had rejected her proposal and dared to humiliate her like that. She would never forgive him. Suddenly a voice said it had a message for the test administrators. The second test came to an end, and the test was passed by 30 participants. Administrators have them ready to meet the chosen ones and conduct the next test. Danjon pressed play for the crown and said it would be interesting, and gave orders to the administrators to act, and to make preparations to meet the chosen ones. After the second test, they got to the ship. Urek asked, so the test will be held here? The boy replied that this was his first ship. I can't wait for the next challenge. He's so glad he entered this tower. Just then the administrator and his assistants came out. He told the chosen ones to listen carefully. The players began to ask, who are these people? But he was answered, can't you tell at a glance? They are the administrators of the trials. Principal Rav told the chosen ones that he congratulates them, and he is in charge of this examination. Earlier they had already successfully passed the difficult tests. Did Urek realize that this guy was in charge? Rayev continued talking and told the guys that they had earned the right to be here, and they can be proud with themselves and to be ready to overcome the next test. They will now be placed on a cruise ship, and they will move through the different areas of the test floor to take the exam. And if they successfully complete the final task on the ship, then they will be recognized as the true chosen ones and get to climb the tower. For wealth and fame and power and strength and might are the most important things, and the great journey in search of truth. But a path of glory like that traveled by King Zahard and the 10 great families, and they must earn the right to follow in their footsteps. The receptionists went through their seats, and one of them was telling the guys that now those boarding the liner have to get tickets, and each ticket will be checked daily at noon, so he advises you not to part with it, and now they can go through one at a time. Suddenly, Urek felt some kind of aura coming from the end of the line. He turned around and realized that strange guys had joined them. Afterwards, inside the liner, the players were all shocked by such beauty. After all, this liner is like one whole huge house. The boy told the older man to look too, because it was the first time he had seen such a thing. Urek was also shocked and replied that everything was shining. Danjon stepped in front of them and welcomed the chosen one, saying that he would now be their chief examiner. And during the upcoming challenge, they will be in the role of apprentices. During their apprenticeship, they will be trained in the specialization they will be assigned. There will be intermediate assessments for each specialization. Their abilities will be assessed by respected examiners, and students who are among the top scorers will be rewarded. Those who are out of the ranking will be disqualified regardless of their exam results. The guy was surprised and asked, disqualified? Does that mean that even if you pass the main exam, you can still drop out? Urek asked, what are specializations? Neo replied that they were positions that team members held. They were invented by the pioneers who had conquered the tower. Scout tracks enemy movement on the front lines and wreaks havoc on the battlefield. And the Adept of Light remains on the sidelines, watching and giving commands. The Spearman works in conjunction with the Adept of Light to destroy enemies at long range. And the Guide controls the flow of Shinszu to exterminate enemies with devastating power. And one solo position, a dawdler who stalks and captures enemies. Of course, there are other specializations, but these 5 are the main ones. If he doesn't know about it, he must have lived in a very remote place. Urek thought for a moment and replied that you could say that. Danjon said that he would now announce the mentors of each specialization to the examiners. And in the first specialty, the Baskerville Guide Mentor. Next up is Adept of Light Mentor Pudre. But the scouts will be mentored by Gisli, and Heidi will be in charge of the spearmen. And finally, Dungeon said, he would be the leader of the Oyster Scouts. Suddenly the player said that to himself. Danjon shouted out particularly loudly. And it's such a strange name. Danjon said that there will now be an allocation based on their abilities. And let the players check their specialization. They should follow their esteemed mentors by checking the schedule. Suddenly, Urek raised his head and saw that he had made it to the Udal team. The boy told Urek that he was assigned to the Lancemen, so they have different specializations. Urek asked him, "What's wrong with that?" "It's great." Neo comes up and says he's a guide too. They end up on the same team, but they have different roles. The player rejoiced and agreed with him. Urek said it's good that specializations don't overlap. There would be no rivalry. And then each of them must give their best to go further. He went straight to the Udalchik's training ground. Danjon met them and welcomed them to the Udal team. And as he had told them, he was their mentor. And first, he wants to make a few things clear. The first thing he wants to tell them is that the Dodger is a major specialty. And that means that the strongest among the chosen ones are here. Therefore, there is no place for the weak. And let the others go through basic training today. It will be different for them. He will not tolerate anything that dishonors the name of the Oodles of Oodles. So today they're going to give an entrance test. Anyone who fails it can pack their bags and get the hell off the liner. The player said immediately that this is insane. They're stuck here with this tyrant. The blonde man was surprised and asked, "Entrance test?" He thought there would be some sort of training camp. Urek replied that it would be a good idea. Danjon held out his hands and said it was time to begin. The players didn't know what to do because he hadn't even explained what they had to do. Danjon asked them, "Why are they frozen? Let them start coming up one by one." Suddenly Blondie said he was just crazy, and he would go first. He apologized to Urek and said that he was used to being ahead in everything. The boy did not argue and left him to go first. Danjon got excited and said they had their first volunteer. And before they start, have him put on this belt. The blonde man picked up the blue belt and asked, "This one?" Suddenly the belt immediately sucked on his belt and tied itself. The blonde man didn't understand how so. After all, he almost couldn't move. Danjon told him to shut up immediately and hurry up a little. Danjon decided to teach him how to properly hold his belt and was showing him everything on his own. Grabbing each other's belts, Danjon said it was time to begin and told everyone to pay attention, what the starting position looks like. And when players will grab the belt, have them raise their torso to rest against their opponent, and let it be known that the game is on. Urek watched and was not at all eager to do such a thing with this uncle. During the game, Danjon told the player that they had already started and were not standing in a pole. Have him straighten his back and keep his feet on the ground. And if he continued to stand so ridiculously stiff, he would be thrown to the ground. Dungeon immediately demonstrated how to do it. And when his back starts to touch the Shinszu on the floor, he lost. The guy couldn't do anything and fell to the ground with a strong kick. The player said, as expected of an officer, he put him down in one fell swoop. Danjon shook off his hands and told the next one to come up, but he saw that there were no more who wanted to come. Suddenly Urek raised his hand and said what he wished, but Danjon went on to say that they were scared, and he would give them an extra chance to the first 3 players, including the first guy. The 2 players immediately said they were going. The girl also decided she'd better try again later. Urek got upset and said that he would have to wait again. He asked the guy standing next to him why he wasn't going. The guy replied that he doesn't fit into any rankings. He's allergic to that kind of thing. Urek said he understood and didn't bother him, but the guy saw that his ally was just plain weird. At this time in the engine room of the liner, Zaharda said that they had managed to sneak in unnoticed, and the first step has been taken. And as they entered the liner, each chosen one was handed a ticket. If they snatched the tickets and waited out the night, they would become their rightful owners, and thus could fully pass the test. Now she suggests that they split up and find their own victims. The team replied to the princess that everything would be done. Zaharda remembered that Urek had been assigned to the Oodles. Before the night was over, Urek's ticket would be in her hands. The blonde saw that both players were instantly knocked over. The guy felt as if his feet had grown into the ground and lost the ability to move, and there was no way to lift them. but Danjon told the boys they were flawed and called the next chosen one to try his luck. But Urek saw that this admin was full of energy. But Danjon looked under his feet, saw the player, and asked, "What is she doing? Let her leave the field immediately." The girl apologized and replied that her legs were not obeying. Danjon told her that there was no need to show her helplessness. Weak people don't belong here. Let her go up at once immediately. Urek went up to the girl and said that he would help her. But Danjon looked up and saw a very familiar face in front of him. Urek helped her and asked if she was all right. The girl said yes and thanked him for his help. Then he put on his belt and asked the teacher if they could begin. And he even took off his shoes, because this game promises to be fun. And he needs to find out what mysterious power he's using. Urek told the administrator that since he had shown him the power of this place, in return he would show him the power that existed outside the tower. Danjon thought, what's wrong with this chosen one? Can't he know about how to use divine beasts? So why are the beasts reacting so strangely to him? Urek got into a wrestling pose and told the teacher it was time to begin. Danjon asked him that he was doing that. Urek laughed and replied that he was just repeating after him. Let him hurry up a little and they would start. Or was the teacher scared? Danjon got mad and said the kid was a crazy asshole. Is he out of his mind or what? And the way he sees it, the guy's just bluffing, trying to hide his fear behind a mask of confidence, and have him grab his belt immediately. Urek said that was right. It was time to begin. Danjon grasped his belt and realized that this guy was just the chosen one and already had such power. Urek suddenly told the teacher that he was quite impressive for his size, and hoped he wouldn't be disappointed. After saying that, Danjon got angry and started pushing with the guy. Urek picked up the moment and made a slash and dropped the teacher to the ground. Danjon didn't even have time to realize how it happened and just lay on the floor afterward. The rest of the select few were shocked at such an occurrence, but a little happy for him. But they started yelling that the administrator was defeated. It was the blonde kid who defeated the administrator. Danjon started saying it's wrong. It doesn't count. He slipped on his own. He was holding back the force so he wouldn't kill him, so he lost his balance. And of course it doesn't count. The chosen one asked him what he was talking about. He clearly saw him being knocked over. And what's with the ridiculous excuses? After all, a man with a soul as dirty as his hair. He looks like an ugly statistic, and he is mean and ill-mannered. As expected of the older generation, they don't know how to admit their blunders at all. Danjon got angry and shouted at the chosen ones to shut up. This cry was so strong and powerful that the sound waves lifted the water from the ground. Urek was surprised and realized that although this man seemed to be overly emotional and throwing words around, something in his words made sense. And for some reason, he was definitely holding back. He never saw the power he wanted to discover. Urek told the administrator that it was true. He had felt it too. He didn't have time to do anything before the admin went down. So it was his mistake. Danjon replied that he realized it too. Urek said he suggests canceling this attempt and trying again. Danjon asked, that would be within the rules, right? The guy replied that of course it would. He wants a fair win. Danjon thought, what's wrong with this brat? Why is he so cocky? He said being able to admit the truth was a good trait. Let him get ready. Urek and Danjon grabbed their belts and the guy told him to get ready. Danjon believed that even without using the enhanced Shinszu, he would definitely win. He was careless, but this time he would gain the upper hand with brute force. Saying it was time to start, Urek immediately lifted him into the air. The chosen one started laughing immediately and shouted for everyone to watch. This time he brought up the administrator. Urek asked during his struggle, what is it with him? What a bore. Let him use his power already. Danjon saw that the jerk was taunting him. Urek told him to show him the strength with which he had attacked him during the ordeal. At this time, on the training ground of the Kopjaks, Heidi greeted her chosen ones. Heidi said that as they had already been told, she was the mentor of the Kopjaks, and as their instructor, she would start teaching them everything from today. And today they're going to have a simple javelin throwing exercise. It's a little exercise to get an idea of their level, and there's no need to be nervous or afraid to try. The guy was shocked and became uncomfortable seeing her hand as it spun at breakneck speed. Heidi showed them her ability to fight and act without the enemy noticing. She showed the ability to even throw a spear, and seeing a target in front of her, she hit it right in the center. The chosen ones said it was cool. Heidi asked the guys, who wants to start? The chosen ones liked it very much and all wanted to try it. But Rue looked at it and didn't move. Ru stood by the entire time while the rest of the Chosen Ones tried and learned how to throw a spear. The Chosen Ones said they are a bunch of amateurs. Let them just watch and learn how it should be done. The Chosen One picked up the spear and picked up speed through it and hit it right at 30 points. Chosen asked, "Have they seen that?" Heidi replied that it wasn't bad. Impressive, even. But Ro thought it was terrible. He couldn't even hold the spear. He had tried his best, and it was a shame. Everyone could throw a spear far enough, but not him. And why was he chosen in the first place? The Chosen One approached him and asked him what he was doing here. Ru stood up and replied that he just couldn't throw the spear. The Chosen One told him it was his first time. No need to get upset. You can't hold your nose. He had seen him during the last trial, hadn't he? Ru was pretty cool, and his name is Rowan. Rowan shook his hand and said it was nice to meet him, and he shouldn't be upset. After all, Junior wanted to take him on the team, and he was sure he had his own hidden talent. Ru was surprised and asked him if it was true. Frankly, he felt that he was good for nothing. Rowan replied that he trusted Junior's gut. He is definitely going to be someone special, just like all of them. They couldn't team up, but when his youngest picked him, he started to like him. So they will stick together and try their best. And he would show him how to use the power. Rowan took the spear and told the younger man to watch carefully. But Ru saw him as a very good man. And Evelith too. There are so many good people in the tower. And Ru is grateful to him for being kind even to a creature as damned as he is. At this time, a select few on the Outelman's training ground were shouting that this guy was just something. And he managed to get the trial administrator up in one fell swoop and yelled at the guy to throw it. Danjon saw that this Chosen One was a bastard. But what kind of power does he have? But Urek saw it as a relief. And even in the darkness, light finds its way. Its power is gradually returning. Urek asked the teacher why he didn't want to show it. The power he'd demonstrated when he'd pounced on him last time. And if he doesn't start using force right now, he will suffer humiliation. Danjon replied to the Chosen One that if he was talking about Shinszu's level, then fine, he would show him, and immediately proceeded to show him. Urek immediately felt that it was her. The power he had felt before. His body hardening and becoming as heavy as stone. And there is some energy here, unknown to him, that makes him stronger. But what is it, he thought? And Danjon saw that the Chosen One was an idiot. And he is fascinated by a power he has no idea about. However, such curiosity leads to death. Danjon told the guy that he couldn't recklessly use that power against him now. Urek was surprised and asked what? Danjon replied that the tower has a rule that officers cannot harm elected officials without special permission, and without administrator approval or mutual consent. At worst, he will be stripped of his position or destroyed. And if he uses all his power here, his body, unable to resist the Shinszu, will be torn in half, and he will die instantly. And then he'll be fired and spend the rest of his life on the run. Urek said it was strange to hear such words from a man in the hands of the Chosen One. Even if he did so, he would not die. Danjon asked the guy, did he think he would fall for such a cheap provocation? Better to suffer humiliation than to let your whole life be ruined. And he has a suggestion. Urek was surprised and asked with surprise, a suggestion? The administrator replied that is correct. Let him listen and realize it's not a bad deal. They will have a duel in 3 days, which will be subject to admin approval, and put their lives on the line. He doesn't know all the details of the next challenge, but it will be called the game for the crown. As far as he knows, there will be a space where they can fight without being seen. And if the fight is consensual and secret, he'll go all out. Their lives are on the line. He wants a real battle, not these boring games, doesn't he? He's right, isn't he? Urek replied, sounding tempted. Danjon thought the boy was a fool for falling for the provocation so easily. But suddenly he said there was another condition. He would immediately let him go and fall himself, and then admit defeat. Urek asked why would he do that? Danjon replied that if he did that, he would let everyone else take the test. Urek said those were pretty good terms. He let the belt go with a shake of his hand. Urek pretended to slip and immediately fell to the ground. He didn't move again for a few seconds. Urek stood up and said that he had fallen. But the guys were in shock and could not believe such a thing. The Chosen One shouted that, as expected of a trial administrator. Once he wanted to, and he becomes invincible. His body stiffened and he crumbled like a stone. And where is the source of this extraterrestrial power? Does it come from his dirty hair? And now he realized he had been lucky before. Danjon replied that he was. But he wasn't bad either. Even though he slipped, he was still able to fell him. He asked the chosen ones if they had seen it. That's what it means to be a true angler. He saw the potential in him in this test. From the beginning, he wasn't going to disqualify anyone. He wanted to see how they would act in a critical situation, so they all passed the entrance test. The chosen ones were shocked and asked if the administrator was telling the truth. Danjon replied that yes, and it was exactly like that. And everyone is welcome to the oodles. The chosen ones rejoiced and said that they didn't understand anything, but they passed, and that's the most important thing. Danjon turned around and told the chosen one that he would be at the venue in 3 days. He's going to kill him. But Urek wouldn't let him talk to him like that and answered him in kind. And he saw in his mind that, though not his type, he liked him. Danjon said for everyone to go back to their rooms. Newcomers, you may spread out. The rooms are divided by teams. Urek realized he had no idea, but it had been a long time since someone had challenged him, putting his entire life on the line. And it had been a long time since he'd fought someone who risked himself without burdening his conscience. The chosen ones came out of the training hall and were saying already that they were tired, and they want to see their room already. Suddenly, one girl ran next to the chosen one, and Urek recognized her a little. He asked her, she was one of the chosen who had passed the test, right? The chosen one replied that yes. She wanted to say that she was grateful to him for such an act, and wished him a good rest. Urek didn't even realize what it was now, and he saw that it was time for his first love, and he was glad he had gotten into the tower after all. The girl saw Urek blush so hard, and now she realized she was right. And this guy is definitely a loner in life. He may seem simple and silly, but in reality he is strong and easily suggestible. And the points of the first entrance test go to her. But Zaharda followed him and saw the chosen one run down the corridor where Urek stood. But she promised herself that tonight she would take his ticket and his life forever. But suddenly the chosen one suddenly noticed her and started shouting that a princess was here. But Zaharda came out and asked him who he was. The chosen one raised his hands and replied that he was surrendering, and said he was the one who had survived with her in the burning building. Zaharda realized who he was and told him to be a little more careful. Someone could be eavesdropping on them after all. The chosen one said he apologizes, but he had one offer. Zaharda got curious and asked him what the offer was. The chosen one replied that he could see the princess had scheduled this man. Would she mind if he joined? He wants to pick up one of his tickets too. The princess asked with surprise, unite? But why on earth would he want to do that? The boy replied that it might not be necessary, but the truth was that he wanted to unite with her. And if she would just accept him until this ordeal was over, no, not even after that, he will devote himself to her. The princess apologized and replied that she is very selective in who she accepts on her team. At this time, Rowan packed a bag of sodas and said, "This is awesome. This place is really cool. They just got a ticket and everyone gets him and drinks all for free." Rue said it's really like heaven. But suddenly Urek saw them and said that as he sees it, the guys are getting closer. Rowan asked Urek if he wanted to join them. The guy replied that it was cool and they could do it in their room. Immediately afterward, they went to their rooms and began opening sodas and drinking. Rue asked, labeled 50, is that what they call a carbonated beverage? Rowan replied that yes. Has he never tried it before? They say it cools the body. Let him try it. Rue tasted it and said it was a little bitter, but it looks like he's starting to taste the soda. But suddenly the door opened and Evelyn walked in. She asked them, had they been drinking carbonated drinks since day one? And don't let Rowan teach Rue any weirdness. And there's no way that sweet soda is good for his body. But Urek saw that their door had just shattered and told her so. Evelyn approached Rue and said that he had said he was just visiting the next chosen ones, so she wondered why he was taking so long. He was spending time with bad people, doing bad things. What was that supposed to mean? She asked. And now she was disappointed in him. Ryu shouted back at her while getting punches in the eyes that he was apologizing. Evelyn told him it was unacceptable to be friends with these people. And everyone here is an enemy. Let him speak it out with her right now. Evelyn looked at the guys and said that those freaks were all their enemies. Rue asked the girl, what about the scout position? Evelyn blushed a little at this point, and seeing the soda in front of her picked up the bottle and drank. And the guys supported her at that moment. Urek was surprised and said she was even scarier when she was angry. But Rue tried to stop her and asked what happened. The chosen one was walking beside them at this point and saw that they were not behaving sufficiently and did not understand anything. And they don't even realize that something could happen to them at any moment. The princess is going after that silver-haired guy anyway, and in the meantime, he just needs to steal one of their tickets. Then, even if the princess hates it, she'll have no choice but to team up with them. And no matter how much she hates it, he'll find a way to get on her team. Rue asked Evelyn, "Did something happen at the scout training site?" The girl replied that the man had made her do the thing she hated the most. Rue immediately began to recognize and asked who did it. Evelyn replied that it was their position instructor. Rue asked with surprise, did they make her do something she hated? Such a person didn't deserve to be an instructor. And what exactly did he make her do? Evelyn replied that she was forced to pet a puppy. Rue started yelling that to make them do such a thing they weren't even human. But then Rue stopped and asked, "Puppy?" Evelyn cried and answered that was correct. And when he found out about her family, he thought she might have the talent to become an animo. But she really hates touching animals. So she said she didn't want to and didn't touch it. And then the instructor got angry and said, how can she appear from Luopabia's family and not even be able to do that? And have her bring him some soda. Today, they are drinking and partying hard. Rue said that Ms. Evelyn had that problem, but she doesn't like puppies. Evelyn replied that she likes cute animals, but she doesn't hate them. She just doesn't like to touch them. And if she touches it, it breaks. Urek asked her, is that her position? But suddenly, Urek noticed Neo and told her to just not listen and talk to them too. Neo answered him that meant he knew he was here. Urek said he wasn't so dumb that he didn't realize it. Neo replied that it wasn't bad. They just made him do something like a simple test. Neo demonstrated his abilities and said it was something like this. He was told to create it. Rue said that this is the power. Evelyn immediately realized what it was and asked, is it really Shinszu? Urek said it's the same type of power used by test watchers and ranchers named Danjon, right? Neo replied that yes, though she was still far from perfect. Urek said to teach him too. Evelyn thought, an ordinary person with no backstory who had recently gotten into the tower and managing Shinszu only one day after position training. And he's not just an average person, she needs to keep a close eye on this guy. The princess remembered that the ticket check was scheduled for midnight. There were about 4 hours left. She even bought insurance, so there's no need to panic. 30 minutes before ticket check. When everyone should have their ticket with them, it's the perfect time to act. After about 4 hours, Urek said goodbye to his friends and told them to take care of each other. Evelyn was completely relaxed and didn't even realize she was talking and screaming, while Rue tried to calm her down and bring her into the room. Urek turned to the Chosen One and said that now that everyone was gone, maybe he could teach him what she did before. That Shinszu, or whatever his name was. Neo asked if the door should be closed first. It's visible from the street, and he didn't realize Urek had such an annoying temper. Neo says that Shinszu is the holy substance that fills this tower. He lets them rest, eat, sleep, and he's a little annoyed by it. In Russian, anyway, tying the Shinszu to one area, it can be used for different purposes. This area is called a room. Urek asked him how he does it. Neo replied that there were 2 ways. He can either draw out the Shinszu accurately flowing through his body, or he can compress the Shinszu in the space around him. He draws out the maximum amount he can store in his body. Controlling Shinszu in space is an ability that can only be acquired by people with extremely rare talent, and even then only after long training. Urek asked her how on earth does she pull Shinszu out of her body. Neo answered him to visualize it. The boy was surprised and asked how to visualize. Neo answered him to imagine that he had a round ball in front of him, then tried to make a hole in that ball and connect a small tube between it and his body. And through 3 pipes he let the water from his body flow into it. And that's kind of how he fills the Shinszu room he created. Urek said he was filling the room he created. And during the process he said that he created the room and then filled it. Neo watched the whole process and told his ally to fill her up now. Opening his eyes, Urek said nothing appeared, but he was a little wrong in his words. Neo replied that of course. No one gets it right the first time. Urek asked, she just learned it today, hadn't she? Neo replied that he was a genius, though what a talentless freak he was. Urek was still talking, he definitely felt something. Neo said it's not something that happens instantly. Most ordinaries aren't able to do that in a lifetime. Urek began to try his new abilities once more and commanded the energy to fill the vessel. Immediately, everything began to shake unexpectedly. The principal immediately ran to Danjon's room and told him to come out immediately. Danjon was dozing at that time and woke up from the screaming and asked what happened. The director replied that a huge number of Shinszu appear at the bottom of the cruise ship. Danjon ran outside and asked what's wrong. What was really going on? The guy replied that everything was under the ship. Danjon walked to the edge of the ship and was shocked at what he saw. He didn't understand how this could be. Urek was getting angry at this time and said that nothing was working. Neo replied that because it wasn't easy to do it right away. Danjon suddenly started yelling that the Shinszu was getting bigger, and for every ordinarian on board, due to sudden weather changes along the itinerary, the course of the cruise would be drastically altered. Rowan saw all this too and asked what was even going on. Danjon motioned for everyone to get ready to strike. And for every resident on board, he's asking everyone to brace for impact and hold on tight. Neo asked the guy what happened. Urek replied that it looks like something happened outside. He will go out to get some soda and go to the bathroom too. Danjon asked, how could this have happened? Who was the genius who made it? The boy replied that he didn't know, because it just appeared suddenly out of the blue. Danjon asked who is the chief test monitor. The boy replied that he didn't know. He left without saying where he was going. Danjon immediately thought about it and realized that he would return to the palace again, and told the others that they should block it as much as possible. We can't let the ship be destroyed. Tell them to bring in the chief observer of the test that controls the waves. Danjon looked at it all with wonder and asked, what kind of Shinszu is this? He had never seen such a bright Shinszu in his entire ranker career. Danjon suddenly looked closer, hearing the voice, asking what was that just now? He seemed to have heard some of that Shinszu. Danjon asked, is he wrong? And started screaming in fear that it was Shinszu who was still getting bigger. Everyone was screaming in fear because they didn't know how to stop him. Ru also ran away and asked what was really going on. And if it continued, the ship would sink. The chosen one from the princess team realized that this wasn't just some random chaos. The talentless girl from the 10 great families had been taken away and moved to another room. And now they are the only ones at this time who can do what they have planned. And that is a great fortune for them. He doesn't know what even happened outside, but when everything is in chaos, this is his chance. He immediately ran up behind them and decided to attack. But Rowan sensed his approach, and seeing him with the corner of his eye, he knocked Ru aside, saving his life. But Rowan was a little hurt by the enemy's weapons. He asked him who he was, and Ru asked his friend if he was all right. The enemy replied that he had missed a vital point, but he knew that his ultimate goal was to team up with that silver-haired guy and man up. For now, he has to get at least one ticket at all costs. And first, he has to steal the ticket of a guy named Ru. And it's natural to target the weak. But Urek was in the restroom when suddenly the door opened very quickly. Urek said, what with the lights flashing and everything shaking? He's already angry that he couldn't make that Shinszu, and now his mood is ruined. But then Zaharda entered and shouted his name. Urek covered his body and replied that this was the men's room. Zaharda told him if he was aware that she was alone here. Urek asked why girls in this manhwa like to break doors. And don't let her tell him she followed him into the bathroom to ask him out? Zaharda replied that she had come to steal his ticket. Urek was surprised and asked what? Zaharda replied that the exam supervisor said that if she could steal the ticket, she could take the exam again. Urek asked her, did she mean that? Zaharda replied that yes, that was exactly what she needed. Urek said he thought she needed something to get on the cruise, but does it really have to be a ticket? Zaharda replied that no, it was essentially irrelevant anymore. Urek asked, then why is she following him? Is she a stalker? But as she probably already knows, he's strong as hell. He just wanted them both to pass the exam, so let him go steal from someone else. Zaharda answered no and said she was going to get his ticket. She immediately jumped on him from behind. And whether mate or prey, they always aim for the strongest, don't they? Urek said that it was even troublesome. But for a gentleman like him, fighting a woman is quite a challenge. But if she goes that far, let her get ready to admit that only he will be the winner. Suddenly Neo felt something strange and thought, what kind of earthquake? Something must have happened outside. But when he looked around the corner, he saw the boys fighting the stranger. And they are in great danger, for blood has already been spilled on the floor. Evelyn also came to her senses and turned to Mr. Liu in her sleep and said her throat was dry. When she opened her eyes, she shouted to Ru to bring her water. She couldn't get out of bed. Ru asked his enemy how could he be here? He clearly saw that he had failed the test. Rowan was also surprised and asked, are they seeing a ghost? And why is it attacking them specifically? The chosen one took the needles in his 5 fingers, and with all his might pointed them straight at the boys. The Chosen One took his 5 fingers and pointed them straight at the boys. The Chosen One thought it was cool, and he didn't know why Rohan had made the gesture, since they had helped each other. If he can do well here, he can get both of their tickets, and that's even better. But suddenly he saw a shadow behind them and said there was a strange ghost there. Evelyn appeared on the horizon and told her enemy that she really thought he had been eaten by a goat then. But how did he manage to crawl out of Goat's stomach? When the Chosen One saw her, he was very angry, and the guys were shocked that she woke up so early. The Chosen One told her that she fainted because she was drunk, didn't she? Evelyn asked him back. Why would she drink something so harmful to her body? The Chosen One replied that it was obvious. She had just fallen on his back. She was so drunk, she didn't even realize where she was. Evelyn said that, for one thing, she was drinking carbonated beverages, not alcohol. And who gets drunk on soda anyway? It's all just a publicity stunt. The Chosen One was surprised and asked if it was a publicity game. Evelyn replied that if she was drunk on anything, it wasn't alcohol or carbonated drinks. But that's because of the smell of Mr. Liu rolling it on his back. Is she drunk now? Rowan got upset too and said that he would go to his room. But Evelyn got angry and poked his eyes with her fingers. Evelyn says she doesn't understand how he managed to crawl back out of Goat's throat, but she can't forgive him for attacking Mr. Rowe. The Chosen One asked in surprise, what? And what if she didn't want to forgive him? But Evelyn wouldn't talk to him and immediately flew into him with a fist. Evelyn told him right away he's also asking what's going to happen. Even after sewing so much, he can't even understand what's going on. And it's not his mother's warm embrace, it's the inner tower. Does he really think the inner tower is the same as his inner ass? And don't let him touch what's hers. And immediately attacked him with her technique and told him to die. But the Chosen One wasn't intimidated by this and decided to respond by telling her she was crazy. But Evelina picked up the moment and stepped aside to dodge the attack, and said that the real trash was his skills. Evelina didn't play with him for long and dodged a counterattack with her arms. And after that, she ran up to him and handled him with several leg kicks that she aimed right at his head. But she didn't stop there and continued to beat him like a garbage bag. The Chosen One was completely beaten to a bloody pulp and couldn't even move anymore. Rowan looked at all this and said it was amazing. And she's one of the 10 great families that can finish off anyone who touches her loved ones in a heartbeat. But suddenly the administrator turned to all those elected and said that the tickets will now be checked by the crew, and asked everyone to prepare their tickets. And the ticket check will start in 10 minutes. The man started checking tickets and asked everyone to show their tickets, and threatened that if the Chosen Ones didn't show him the tickets, he would just eat them. Zaharda at this time tried to overpower the guy and grab his ticket so that she would pass the exam further. But Urek kept dodging, and she couldn't reach him with her weapon. Zaharda was very serious against him, and there wasn't even a sense of pity or concern. Urek realized that she was Princess Zaharda, and her skills are different from the others. Urek turned to her and said that he had heard she was the daughter of someone called the King of the Tower. Is this true? Zaharda replied that biologically no, but if he was talking about her current relationship with King Zahard, then yes. Urek asked what does that even mean? The princess replied that she was sort of the king's adopted daughter. The Zahard family selects the most talented girls in the tower to become Zahard princesses, and the chosen princesses borrow Zahard's power to climb the tower. Urek listened and said that it was a very complicated system. Zaharda answered him that he didn't even know anything about the Zaharda princesses. Urek immediately dodged her attack and asked her if she was sure. Exactly, but only in tower information. If he wins this fight, will she back down after he does her just one favor? Suddenly, during the attack, Urek dodged and the ticket just flew out of his pocket. Zaharda tried to catch it and asked with surprise, favor? Urek said it's not difficult. Let her set him up with King Zaharda. Zaharda apologized and replied that it was the hardest thing to do in this tower. Meeting King Zahard is not just possible even for her, Princess Zahard. Urek wondered and asked with surprise, he is her father, isn't he? Zaharda replied that the only Zaharda princesses who can meet the king directly are those who possess the series of 13 months. Urek was surprised and asked, 13 months? The princess replied that yes, it was a weapon granted directly by King Zahard. There are 13 of them in total. The princess who receives a weapon from the 13-month series acquires the right to meet the king in person. That's why she climbs the tower. She gets one of the weapons from 13 months and meets the king. And in the end, she kills him. Urek was surprised and replied that it was the same story they saw in the first season. Zaharda got angry and told him to shut up. Urek says, how about doing it like this then? He helps her get one of the weapons from the 13-month series or something. And she'll set him up with Zahard. Well, if he turns out to be a villain, he'll kill him, too. Suddenly, the administrator turned to everyone standing and said that the tickets will now be checked by the crew, and asks everyone to have their tickets ready. And to all those selected, the ticket check will begin in 10 minutes, and asks everyone to be in their seats. Zaharda was surprised that it had been so long, and that meant it was time to use what he had prepared, and it looked like it was time for her to use it. Zaharda turned to him and asked if his ticket had fallen on the floor. Urek rummaged through his pockets and saw that the ticket was under his feet. Urek asked her, since when? Zaharda used that moment and attacked him with her weapon. Urek saw his ticket, which was right in front of his eyes. He immediately realized that it was his ticket. Zaharda grabbed the ticket and said she apologizes, and here is his real ticket actually lying in her hands. Urek was surprised and asked, then what was that ticket? Zaharda replied that she had stolen that ticket from one of the regulars while she was on this cruise. In fact, before she met him, she had already managed to steal another ticket from another regular. She just dropped it beforehand and pretended to be fooled, like himself. But still, her target is his ticket. Urek asked her if she had lied to him. Zaharda replied that was fine, the carriage would be here soon. As long as she has a ticket, she will succeed. Urek asked her what she was even doing. Why is she putting the ticket exactly there? Zaharda answered him to try to steal it, and called him a virgin for last. Urek got angry, and said he would kill her right away. Did she think he couldn't do it? Zaharda replied that she was going to complain about him as a pervert. Urek flared up and asked what she wanted from him. Zaharda's response was for him to try and steal it. If he fails at that, how is he going to kill King Zaharda? She will show him that playing easy before a desperate man is not the way that will work. Urek immediately felt her aura suddenly change. Something had emerged from that woman. But all of a sudden, the checker came in and said he needed to provide him with a ticket. Zaharda asked how could he be here, and is he really the ticket checker? The checker told them to provide him with the tickets, and if they don't provide it, he'll just eat them. The checker showed them that it was forbidden to board without tickets. Zaharda replied that there was some misunderstanding. But the checker started shouting that it was forbidden to board without tickets. Urek replied that he understood everything and would soon return his ticket. But Zaharda apologized and said that she would definitely get permission from the supervisor. But the checker still repeated that it was forbidden to board without tickets. But suddenly the checker began to multiply and used his voice to tell them what he needed. But the checker didn't leave it at that and said it was a death penalty for those who sat down without a ticket. Urek asked, is he going to fight them? Zaharda replied that if they can solve it with this, then this is their thank you gift. The assistant went to the receptionist and said the ticket controller still hadn't shown up. So they searched around, but he was still not there. Danjon was angry and couldn't understand what had happened to him. Again, he began to feel the Shinshu energy gathering. He felt that Shinszu was acting like a living being, and she's chasing the cruise. The principal felt it too, and decided to check it out himself by walking closer and closer to Shinszu. The principal thought, what happened while he was gone? And what kind of person created such a giant Shinszu? The guy at this point was yelling and asking where is he, the little creep, and saw that he had really disappeared. But asked Chang'e what did he tell him before? He told him to make sure he was dead. The guy replied that it looked like he was in for continuous punishment from Rahab. Sphere asked what is the guy going to do if these guys come in contact with the permanent from whoever was devouring the light at the moment. The boy answered him not to say such ominous things. Wherever he goes, he can taste it, find it, and kill it, but he will follow the scent of blood. Rav asked Danjon what happened here. The administrator replied that he didn't know. Suddenly, a giant Shinszu appeared. Rav asked with a surprised look, suddenly? But what is this giant Shinszu, he thought. Rav pulled his hand up to his and said he would deal with it, and have him order everyone to fall back. Rav used his black magic against light magic and tried to extinguish Shinszu with it. But Shinszu was so big and strong that his magic began to slowly fade away. But then in a moment, everything changed, and the white light began to fade away. Danjon rejoiced and said it was just as he expected from the chief test inspector. It was amazing. But Rav thought it was for real? There's no way a Shinszu of that size would just show up for no reason. The checker was still angry and said they were worthless constants. How dare they behave so brazenly after breaking the law? But they still get the death penalty. It's time to use the death penalty against violators. The checker just became a monster and started attacking everything around him that was near him. But Zaharda suddenly wanted to give him something. And she is a pathetic, empty person. And the lost one rides the waves and let him be contained in this vessel. Downstream, in the 6th lake lives a water fairy. She demonstrated her new abilities and showed what she can do. Zaharda became a fully aquatic queen and immediately attacked the checker who wanted to fight them. Urek thought, as he expected, she's an interesting woman, but she's coming back to life. And then he won't lose to her either, and he'll take his battles for granted without even batting an eye. But the checker just started attacking back. But Urek didn't care about that. He continued to fight him to the last. But under each of his blows, the checker simply disintegrated into molecules and then reassembled into its former state. The checker said it was useless. He immediately fended off an attack from a guy who got very close to him. Urek realized it wasn't working, but the monster shouted that they were idiots and ordinary people. And he was created in the workshop. He's a shurling humanoid filled with Shinszu. Ordinary people like them who can't even handle Shinszu properly, and can't even touch him with a finger. Urek asked, Shinszu again? How many other people are there who don't even know how to use Shinszu? He realized that if he used his special power, he could probably catch this ghost. But he doesn't want to use it here. As expected, maybe he should try using Shinszu again. What was he supposed to do again? But suddenly there was a huge explosion, and Rav just tried to run away so that Shinszu wouldn't hit him. Rav turned around and didn't realize how it had even happened, and how it had reappeared again. Danjon started yelling that it had reappeared. What are they going to do now? Rav asked Shinszu, how dare he contradict his will? This is his territory after all, and let his energy flow into it. But the guys inside just couldn't keep up and were dangling in different directions. Rowan asked what just happened again. Urek got angry too and asked how the driver was even operating this cruise. Zaharda just picked that moment and attacked immediately from behind. But the monster saw her coming and dodged her. The monster immediately applied its powerful energy and attacked back at the girl. The impact was so strong that she couldn't even keep up and broke through the wall with her body. The monster told her that if she couldn't get her ticket back by the 30-minute mark, she would be eliminated from the test. So just let her give up and let herself be eaten. Zaharda replied that it even annoys him. That's why tough governance is the worst. She accepts the offer of the chief test taker. How many times will she have to tell him that she got the ticket fair and square because of her own skills? Would he listen to her for once? Suddenly, a strange grass suddenly bloomed beside her and surrounded her. This herb was called Rotala Red, and she is a fairy living in the middle of the 5th river. Urek was surprised and asked what it was. Zaharda asked what was wrong with him. Why had the mood suddenly changed? Urek saw that it had become quite strong. Zaharda said her name is the water that flows along the riverbank and turns it scarlet, with the madness of the river. That's the name of wrath, really. The water started fighting the monster and immediately cut it into small pieces. But the monster was still regenerating and taking its original form. Urek saw that she had cut her. But what had happened to her anyway, he thought. And she just walked into the tower. And as he can see now, she's crazy. And crazy in the head. The monster was a little surprised and asked to stop. And he acknowledges what she said. He'll deal with it right now if she wants him to. And he actually knows that she got the assignment from the exam monitor. But the ticket she was supposed to have is the wrong one. And that silver-haired boy has it. And he's holding her ticket. Ever since she first stole it from someone, it's been her ticket. So have them switch tickets. That way they both pass. Zaharda tells him that means the monster says he should have said that 5 minutes ago. Zaharda attacked the guy and said it looks like, is it time to work things out between them? And have him hand over the ticket he has to give. Urek replied that they should have just exchanged tickets peacefully, shouldn't they? Zaharda said no, he would lose his ticket and fail, and she would take that ticket and pass. She told him that right away. And now he is her victim. Zaharda didn't waste any time and attacked him immediately. But the boy was able to dodge and defend himself against her saber. But in a moment, Urek grabbed her saber and felt the flow of Shinszu. He immediately let her go and stepped aside. Urek said that everyone can use Shinszu, and at this point, he's the only one without Shinszu. Zaharda swooped down on him and yelled at him to die immediately. And he realized that this wasn't just a normal reinforcement. There must be some kind of restriction. And if he waits for the restriction time to pass, he won't be able to switch tickets. Urek realized it was just a headache and some hassle. And still using all his power against this woman doesn't feel right. If he's going to do it his way, he should try to use Shinszu. Urek decided that he would go all the way. And with all his energy, he let it out. Danjon shouted to the main watcher that he didn't disappear, he reappeared. And he's getting even bigger. And she's already approaching the cruise. Rav also saw that the Shinszu was going where the cruise was. Urek heard it too and realized it was headed that way. Urek felt Shinszu's powerful energy in his hands. He saw it and couldn't believe what it had gathered. Urek asked if she could see it. It's a Shinszu. He can see it too. Zaharda replied that she congratulates him. And by the way, does he really have to keep gathering like that? Urek asked, but what's going on with this? Something doesn't seem right here to him. Zaharda used this moment to attack. But Urek turned around and replied let it be, and decided to point it right at her. Rav had been watching where Shinszu was going the whole time, and he found the room where everything was coming from. Rav used his dark energy again and said there was no chance. All the people, animals and plants in this place, and even Shinszu itself were out of his will. Danjon turned to the director and said that if he attacked in this way cruise, but the guys didn't even pay attention and still continued to fight. But as they retracted their heads to the sides, they saw that someone was attacking them, and the energy didn't look like Shinszu. Urek simply turned around and decided to confront that energy, and was pushing it away with his Shinszu. Zaharda wasn't left out either, and with her Shinszu sword strike, she decided to help him. They both became a team, and confronted the dark energy. When he saw his opponent in front of him, Urek asked him what he was doing here. Rav replied that the place Shinszu is going to is for him normal. Urek asked, then what is it? And if he has any complaints, then let him come down.